In this week's episode from View from the Top, we have Kristi Piehl. Kristi is an entrepreneur, founder of a PR crisis agency called Media Minefield based in Minneapolis. They work with entrepreneurs, large organizations to help them really manage their brand story, manage who they are in the public eye. And she shares so much of her vulnerable story, from job loss to her son going through cancer treatment and her being alongside him during that, and the fear, and the transformation that happens in someone, in a family, when that happens. She talks about the before and after moments when something happens. And I think we can all relate to this. Those moments, those lifeline moments when you're like, oh, before that happened to me, I was this way. And after, I looked at the world very differently. So those before and after moments. Sharing the story and choosing the hard path. You know, I think more of us that have been through hard things, which is why I have this podcast, is to share the stories of the light on the other side, the silver lining of going through hard, but what that hard does, how it reframes and helps you reprioritize. And as she says, galvanizes you around your values and what's really important. And really knowing who you are and having that foundation for when the hard happens, because that is a foundation that you can lean on. And the title of the podcast, and really the lesson at the end, is the fear you choose is really what helps you do the hard things. So in good times, maybe, or in easier times, are you choosing hard things? Are you stepping towards your fear? Because that's the way you get used to fear. You get used to dealing with hard things and doing things that are not easy, but you can't wait until the hard things happen to build that resilience. And I think it's a beautiful message from Kristi. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of View from the Top podcast. Welcome to the View from the Top podcast. I'm here, as I said, with Kristi Piehl. And she's going to share her journey. And I know parts of her journey, but I'm actually looking forward to it because, Kristi, I'm sure there's some things I don't even know. And so I'm excited to learn from you and gain wisdom from you. And I would love for you to just kick us off with who you are, how you got here. Like, what's that journey been to kind of get to this place? As some of us might be able to look you up and know who you are, there's always a story behind the story.
Thank you, Jamie, for having me. I'm excited to share my story, and hopefully it resonates and, can help someone else. So I started my television career. I was a news reporter before I started my agency in the 1900s, which now sounds, like we had a horseback. But it was in the 1900s, and I was a television news reporter for 12 years. I worked at 5 different television stations, did some work nationally. And then, I was in the middle of negotiating, my agent was in the middle of negotiating a contract for my next contract. I walked into a room, and there was a long boardroom and tissues and manila envelopes and the station attorney and my boss and the HR person. And I was one of 20 people who lost our jobs in late 2008. So there was an economic, the housing crisis was right at that moment. And so our whole department got wiped out, and I lost my job and took some time to, what do I do with myself now? What do I want to be when I grow up? And it's a really important question to ask. It was for me, because when I started the what do I want to do when I grow up question, I was in my 20s and I didn't have any children, and I could go wherever and do whatever. And then in my mid 30s, it's a really different question. And from that, it became clear to me that I wanted to disrupt public relations, and I really wanted to help people. And I took a class at my church, and Media Minefield was born there. And now we have clients all over the country. We have 40 to 30 employees. We handle social media, earned media, meaning news interviews, crisis. We do a lot of trainings and really focus on building awareness, elevating brands and leaders. And I have written a book. I have a podcast, and I love what I do.
I love, and you're being very humble, but I mean, the awards and you have disrupted, right? You very much created a place, and maybe a different view of what public relations looks like, having sat in the other side, right? In that seat. And I also loved you sharing kind of that moment, that pivot point, as I would say, because there are a lot of people going through that or have been through that. And it's really easy to wallow in that, right? And feel like that defines you. Do you remember kind of a moment during that or another part? There's probably been multiple moments for most of us where it was that when everything looked great on the outside, but on the behind the scenes that people really knew, right? What was going on either with you? Because I think we also kind of try to hold it all together for everybody else. And really inside, we're feeling very different. Do you remember what I call kind of the climb moment? Has there been one or many throughout your career?
I think about the no going back moments, the moments where people sort of say, before this and after this. And there are these kind of moments where they really define.
Yep.
And for me, I've had a few in my life, the personal one certainly, but it was every time I moved a television station, I moved to a different part of the country. That was sort of hey, these 3 years are defined by this place and these people and the stories that I got to tell there. And then it was absolutely losing my job. And the 18 months between losing the job and starting the company, I think it's easy to brush by that time. When someone like you reads my bio, lost the job, started the company, and it was almost 2 years actually from start to finish. And those were defining moments and really difficult. It was the best and the worst sort of my career.
Yeah.
And then starting the company, gosh, as an entrepreneur, it's very humbling and exciting, and there's a lot. And then, there was a personal situation with my family in 2025 where my son who was a senior in high school was diagnosed with cancer. And that was a, drop on the knees. Everything is in a totally different perspective in 1 minute where the world looks one way, 2 doctors walk in, the world looks totally different. So there was that moment as well. So I have a few. I think you live long enough.
Yeah.
Got a lot of those moments.
Well, and the most successful people, right? If you truly listen to their stories, have been through those fall to your knees moments, right? Where you're like, how do I get through this? And it's in those moments that the resilience is built. And, do you remember consciously during any of those moments kind of how you managed your mindset? I'm sure you still had the bad moments and you're still going to have the down times, but like, what role did mindset play for you and the tools that you needed?
Huge. I think in all of those sort of moments is control what you can control and control the energy where the energy can be productive, because me being angry at my boss or mad or any of that is unproductive energy. I can have emotions around that, but spending time thinking about what I could have done to change it, not productive. Thinking about what my boss could have said or not said or how that, not productive. But now here I am. What emotions do I have around this? And then what can I control going forward?
Yeah. I love that. I say to my kids, there are going to be times we need to sit in the suck, right? And we're just going to need to feel the feelings and sit in the suck, but we don't stay there.
Right.
We need to plan, but we also can't negate the fact that you've been through some stuff that sucks, right? And everybody, the world would say, hey, Kristi, if you curl up in the fetal position, right, and just want to stay in bed for a few weeks, yes, and that's not probably the right thing, right? For most people, and I think a lot of us, maybe the people around us want us to be safe and they want us to, kind of go inward, but that's not necessarily the right thing to do. So in those moments, if someone's listening and has gone through a job loss, is dealing with a health issue like what you've gone through, and they're going, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? I don't see it. What tips or tools would you give them on just here's something that helped you get through?
A couple of things. One is you can't go through it alone.
Community.
So, find your people, get your community together and share your story. There's so many people suffer in silence and they feel so isolated and they miss connection. And I heard someone wisely recently say, it's going to be hard whether you share it or don't share it. But if you do share it, you might help someone else. Right. So why not choose that hard path instead of sit and suffer alone?
Yeah.
And The other thing, Jamie, that I think is important is the opportunity that everyone has, which is when things aren't terrible, when you aren't on your knees, that's the time to do the hard things, lean into fear, try things you've never done before, build your resistance. The running a 10-mile race and raising money for children's cancer, which I did last year, I would have said a few years ago, gosh, this is so hard. You know what? It's not hard. Watching your kid go through treatment, now that's hard. So I think it's just push yourself when you can, because there are moments when your whole world changes and you don't get to say, yeah, no, thank you. I choose not to right now. So choose hard when it's a choice.
I love that redefining hard. It's so true. And I've had some personal stuff since the beginning of the year. I don't know that I've shared it on the podcast yet, but we had a major medical issue in our family too. And it has shifted who I am even more than I realized just since the beginning of this year. And so I'm curious for you in those shifts, right? Your identity shifts, right? In that, what guidance or now looking back on it, how do you let go of that identity, maybe that you were known for, or that really was your worth? And how do you shift that identity into who you are now? Because those hard things change you.
Two things. When it was the television news reporter thing to unemployed public layoff, I had no idea that my identity was so much wrapped around my career at that time. And I had to grieve that. I had to grieve the loss of this career that I thought I would retire doing is over. And that was a healthy thing to grieve. And it was very valuable, but it took time and it was difficult. And I'm glad I moved through that. With what happened with our son and with Alec, it very clearly put all the things into motion that I have said, which is, family first and the job is a job and all these things. But at that moment, I sent emails right away. We're going to cancel all of my travel. We're going to do all of this. Whatever happens to the company, that's okay. I think I have a leadership team that can handle all of this.
Right.
And I believe that everyone can handle this. But at the end of the day, if the company can't last while I have to deal with this medical thing and my son is alive, I'll find another job.
Yeah.
Because it really clarifies what matters and what doesn't matter and what you're willing to do, what you're willing to fight for.
Yeah. I love that word that you use, clarifies, right? It just gets super laser focused in on what really matters. How would you, let's say pre-2025, how would you have defined success then? And how do you think your definition has changed?
Excellent question. I don't know that my definition has changed. I would say that the way I think about it has changed. So what I mean by that is I think success equals freedom. Success equals freedom to make the choices you want to make with the people you want and the ability to give back. And I was on a path where I was sort of planning my exit from the business. I mean, it was a longer road, but it was, there were financially and all these different kind of plans. And then once Alec was sick and I went through all of that and spent a lot of time in hospital rooms and hotel rooms and all of that, it really became clear to me that success equals freedom. And part of that freedom is the ability to help as many people as possible. And that requires that I stay relevant, that I stay in a position where I can have a stage, have an audience, and success equals, gosh, if I can look back on my life and say, she had the company, she did all of these things, and she helped this. And that doesn't mean that I need a plaque on the wall or people even need to know, but for me to know that I had the freedom to help as many people as possible.
I love this message from you. And I want to restate it in the way that I'm hearing, because I think a lot of people struggle with this, is the hard things don't have to you don't have to have a midlife crisis and it has to completely change who you are. It can actually galvanize the values that you already had. They just show up differently coming out of that. And that could be a job loss or a health issue and I think so many of us feel like we need to become a different person when really we just need to go deeper into what we already believed, right? Or what was already important to us, and it just galvanizes it for us. I think that's a really interesting perspective to have. what's one thing that you do differently now that your past self wouldn't have valued or cared about?
So this is totally different from many of the things we've been talking about. My past self thought that there were people that I could hire that could take over parts of the business, and that I, as the CEO and owner, could say, here, so-and-so, this is for you to handle. And then I went and got my master's, and because I was feeling there was a tension around that as the company was growing. And I realized that there are parts of all business that I don't need to be the expert, but I need to have a working understanding of things. And so I think my past self would be surprised at my financial literacy that I now have gained over the course of time. And I would like to go back and tell my 2010 self, hey, take a couple classes in finance. You're an English major. It'd be real helpful, because otherwise you're going to spend a lot of money getting a master's down the road. So get some certifications or something. So I think that is what my 2010 self would be shocked by.
Yes, I love that. I want to shift us to, we shared a little bit of the journey, but to action, right? And what we can control, what we can do. So what are the top 2 or 3 energy habits or rituals, right? Or things that you've done to kind of get you through those tough times? Like what is that thing that helps ground you?
I know who I am. And I knew who I was before. And then during getting my master's, I learned about the book True North by Bill George. And it really is taking your life experience, your past experience, and understanding who I am as a leader. Not, gosh, I'm going to read this book and be like this person, but this is who I am. And these are all the experiences that have shaped me into the person that I am. And if I lean into those things and show up as an authentic and vulnerable leader, that is successful, as opposed to trying to show up and be someone I'm not. And so that has been really impactful for me, is just knowing who I am and what I stand for and what my non-negotiables are. Now, of course, I evolve and I change, but the core part is the same. And when we work with, leaders at Media Minefield, whether it's their thought leadership or their social media, and it's, I'd like to be sort of like this person, or I'd kind of like to be a leader like this person, or let's do the lighting like this social media account. That is not a strategy for success, because before you can lead anyone else, you have to really understand who you are and make peace with that. And all of us have these jagged edges and these things that we didn't get a therapist, get some, whatever it is. And also I've learned in the galvanized category, when Alec was sick, that there were people and relationships in my life that were not healthy. And when have full capacity of time and energy, you can deal with some non-healthy that's fine. Well, when you have a very limited ability, the relationships are galvanized as well.
Yeah. And there's cleanup to do. And a lot of us don't want to do the cleanup because it feels like, right, we're so worried about what people are going to think. But if that energy at one point could have been flowing in both directions, and if that energy is not positive at some point, but I think women specifically, and men probably have the problem too, but of changing the relationships, changing the rooms we're in or the people we're giving time to is a really hard.
100% agree. I read something yesterday that said, and I'm going to slaughter the quote, and it was someone quoting their grandma. So it's not a statement. You can look it up, but I don't think you're going to find it. But it was something, but it's certainly not mine. Something like, everyone brings you joy. In some cases, it's when they enter your life, or they stay in your life, or they leave your life.
Oh my goodness.
And I think there's tons of value in that, because there are relationships that are for a season. And I think, to your point, women with friendships, to say, you know what? Thank you for the memories we made. I'm grateful for them. I wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah. I've spoken with people, right, who are in hard times or have been through hard times, and they've had people that they thought were closest to them that couldn't handle being around them during that hard time. The other person couldn't handle it. And it's like, okay, there's your sign, right? I mean, you have to have people around you that can handle the hard stuff when you're going through, right?
Yes. And I would have thought that you were a little bit crazy for saying that had I not lived it. And it's one of the things that I learned very early on, is that many people don't want to live in a world where childhood cancer or someone that they know, if who's young and healthy and strong and has a bright future, is that sick. And it's much easier just to not pay attention to it and to not lean into all of that the healing journey is, than it is to look at it and to deal with it and to sit with it and to be around the people who are living it. And we have some of our friendships and some of our relationships and some of our family members were right there. And some of them literally disappeared and weren't around because they just couldn't do it. And I've mentored another family going through a similar diagnosis, and same thing happened with that. So I believe this is probably universal and probably not limited to cancer. And it's okay. I'm again back to sort of where we started, Jamie. I'm not going to be angry with those people, but it's my choice if they're in my life or not.
Yeah. Right. And it's your choice on how to also use those learnings going forward, right? To help others like you're doing.
Yes.
So for somebody who's listening, and maybe it's a high achiever that's burnt out, maybe it's somebody that's going through hell right now, personally or professionally, they just lost their job, they're dealing with a health issue. What guidance would you give them? What if they were sitting across from you right now, what would you say to them?
A lot of people burn themselves out and overdo their calendars and their mental energy because they're striving towards something that actually doesn't matter, while allowing the things that really do matter to fall apart. And I have, I may be the least popular person at my book clubs and my friend groups now, because when I hear people, talking about things that are, my work is taking me away from my family, or I cry when I get on the airplane to go and I'm missing my kids' stuff. And life is short. And no guilt, no shame. Everyone has to live their own life, but you get to do it once. So if you've got these deep feelings that are really impacting your ability to function as a healthy human being, spend some time analyzing them. And that doesn't mean that you should quit your job and, lock your kids in a room and stare at them because they're going to grow up. It's about where you better make sure that you really feel good about the decision you're making right now and take the next right step. It doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out for the next 10 years, but gosh, if I do this one thing tomorrow, I'm going to feel good about that. So what is that one thing?
And that taking the power back, the power to choose. I think we give a lot of our power away and we think other things happen to us and we don't. You have them in every moment of every day. Even if you made a wrong choice, the next moment you have the opportunity to make a different choice. I think sometimes we don't recognize that power in ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean the choice doesn't scare you, right? Or the choice has consequences or risks associated with it, but you still have the choice to make that next decision or how you show up. How do you look at fear and, the things you used to fear? Has what you've been through changed how you look at things that maybe would be scary, right? Big risks or things you want to do. Has that changed for you over the years?
100 million%. I feel like I've said 100% like 20 times in this podcast. So I'm going to this thing matters.
We're at a million. I love it.
Yeah. I have, as I imagine you mentioned in the intro, I've talked about, I wrote this book and I realized that I need to keep writing. Like at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller and I'm now shifting to writing some substacks. And one of the runs that it isn't released yet, but that I have just finished writing is about fear. And it's really about the fear that you choose. And so here's the example that I use in the Substack and it sort of has shown up in my life in different times. So I'm really glad you asked about it. In 2025, Alec, my son was a senior and our family sort of thing is you get to pick the spring break when you're a senior. So he had picked this Costa Rican kind of jungle animal-y thing and we had it all booked and then he got cancer and so we canceled. So when it came around to, okay, you got the all clear, you're cancer free. What do you want to do for spring break? You get a redo. And he said he wants to do the same trip. So we get to Costa Rica and the first time that we did that trip, it was the excursions were, boat rides and very safe. Very safe excursions. And this year when we did it in 2026, we did scary things. And no one said it out loud. There was no decision. There was no family meeting. We just found ourselves doing things that us for, a year ago, we wouldn't have done. And we went on water rapids where you have to wear helmets and there's people in the water to keep you safe, and we're on our own tubes and we're flipping. And I just sat there so joyful because we chose fear. And everyone in my family, my two sons, my husband, I have pictures of them because there was a photographer there. They were afraid at different times and their faces were afraid, but it wasn't the kind of afraid that I had seen the year before. It was afraid because I know what that looks like now. Yeah. I know what it looks like for all of us to be really afraid. It was fear that they chose. And I love that we did the hard thing that we picked, because if you choose fear when you can, you're more ready to be available for the fear that chooses you.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be the title of the podcast because I haven't titled it yet. The fear you choose. I think this is a beautiful place to start to wind down the conversation. And where can people follow you to get more of this subset? We'll include it in the show notes. How can they find out more about what you do? Because I do think when people are going through transition, right, or they're changing and their identity is changing, the work you guys do can help find them again, help them find themselves again, really, and project that. How can people follow you? What are the best places?
Sure. My website is kristipiehl.com, and it's Piehl, Kristi with a K, ends with an I. Lots of ways to spell Kristi. Media Minefield is the website for the company, and I'm on all of the socials. And my Substack will be out in the summer of 26.
Okay. So we'll make sure and we'll include that and then search for you on Substack because I love that. I think you've got a lot to share and a lot of stories to tell. And I'm looking forward to hearing more of them as you go along, right? And you continue to grow. So before I let you go, we're going to do kind of a bonus round, just fun questions here. Okay. So you're having a low energy day and you're like, man, I got to get my energy up. What's the go-to song that you would put on to get your energy up? And by the way, we're actually creating a Spotify playlist of everyone's go-to song that we'll start sharing this summer.
My new go-to song is very different than what it would have been a year ago. But I think it will be my forever go-to song because now I have it framed in the kitchen, the lyrics of it, but it's Goodness of God. And I love the CeCe Winans version of it because It's just a reminder of no matter what happens, there's still plenty of good.
I love it. That's a message we all need to hear more of right now in this world. To lead well, you need to be well. What's one thing you do consistently to manage your own energy?
Every morning, be still and sweat.
That could be the name of the podcast. Be still and sweat. I love it. That should be the name of the book. I think you should write a book that's titled that. Okay. So, I asked this question to you. It's a little different. So I'm going to give you a billboard on 394 right here outside our offices. And you can put anything on it, but every executive going to and from work is going to see this billboard. What message would you want to leave them with on that?
It's a quote that I have everywhere in my office at home, and it's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. My cat's name is Waldo, or Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it's, do not go where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. I think too often we imposter ourselves and we try to be other people. Just be yourself, lean into it, and leave a trail, make the path easier for others.
I love this. And I love hearing so many of these messages in what you guys do at Media Minefield, right? What you help executives do. And so you're walking the walk, which I really appreciate and why I wanted to have you on here. So thank you for being here, my friend. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably. And to, the people that are listening, this is why we do this podcast, because we want you to hear the stories of people who are reframing the journey, are reframing the hard things, because I think we all need to hear that right now and know that there is hope. There is a lot of good on the other side of hard. And you certainly shared that with us today. Thank you, Kristi.
Thank you for having me, Jamie.
Success isn't just about reaching the top. It's about what you discover once you're there. Here on View from the Top, we explore the stories, the setbacks, and the inner work that redefine what success really means. If this episode resonated with you, I'd encourage you to share it with someone who might need it right now. And to stay connected, make sure and subscribe so you get notified when we release new episodes. You can connect with me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, or visit my website at jaimetaets.com. All of the links are in the show notes. Thank you for listening to View from the Top. We'll see you at the top and beyond.